Hey guys, welcome to part 5 of our series, Holy Spirit Worship. Today what I want to talk about to wrap up our series is that God has to conduct or set the terms of our worship. So let me give you like this image, this illustration in your head. If you've got two countries that are at war, right? So they're at war, and then one side loses. They decide to surrender, right? The country that wins gets to set the terms of surrender. Am I right? Yes. So, okay, let's say they meet together at some table and they've got the terms drawn out and the losing side signs it. I'm sure the winning side signs it as well. It's the winning side that determines the terms of surrender. It's the same thing in our surrender to God. God determines the terms. And it's not just terms like the Ten Commandments or things you see in the Bible or, yeah, I know I got to obey Him. It's for our good. God knows you better than you know yourself. God knows Himself better than you know Him. And He knows how you can best connect with Him. At the end of the day, the definition of worship is moving into greater intimacy with God. It all revolves around relationship. And God is the perfect orchestrator of relationship. I'm sure you guys have heard of, like, there's people out there that are, what do you call them, like these dating gurus, and like they pair people up, right? And I'm not sure that I'm a fan of that, but here's my example. God is the perfect dating guru between you and Him. So the right thing for us to do in worship is to have our ears open. It's not to look around and try our best to copy what somebody else is doing, right? It's not to get too much in our heads and think, what does worship look like? What should it look like? It's more to have our ears open, our eyes open, and listen to what God is telling us to do. So let me give you some examples from the Bible. You've heard of Samuel, maybe the prophet Samuel. When he was a kid in the temple, he heard God's voice. He didn't know it was God's voice at first, but eventually, like I think on the third or fourth time, he was like, God, is that you? And then God talked to him. And God related with him how He wanted to relate with Samuel. Jonah was in a different place than Samuel. Jonah wasn't in a temple. Jonah was running away. Jonah ended up meeting with God in the belly of a whale. Okay? Moses met with God at the burning bush, and God orchestrated the worship. God said, you're walking on holy ground. You need to take off your sandals. And then as they got into greater intimacy with each other, Moses and God, it was no longer just a conversation between burning bush and Moses. Up on Mount Sinai, the consuming fire of God, as we talked about earlier in the series, totally consumed Moses. So Moses wasn't, looking at the bush. He was consumed by the fire. Paul was on the road to Damascus. He was Saul at the time. And a bright light appeared. The voice of Jesus appeared. Why are you persecuting me? And He made him blind. He didn't have to make him blind. Like no one thing had to happen. But God knows each of these people and knows you so well. He knows exactly what He needs to do in your life if you'll allow Him to do it. He knows the perfect terms of surrender, to know what exactly you need in terms of surrender to connect best with Him and walk into a deeper and more intimate relationship with Him. So here's a challenge I want to give you on our last part of this series, Holy Spirit Worship. I want you in worship to spend a lot more time listening and looking. A lot more time in your spirit saying, God, tell me what you want from me. What does my worship look like when it comes between you and me? What specifically for me? And you might hear something, you might think, man, maybe I'm going crazy. But try it out. If He says, I want you to lift your hands up. If He says, I want you to get down on your knees. If He says, I want you to fast for a day. If He says, I want you to, before you worship me, I want you to go forgive somebody else. Hey, if you think you hear that voice in your head, go try it. And once you do it, see if you get some confirmation from God, whether it's because you just feel great about it or somebody says something to you or whatever it is, where you're like, wow, that really was God. I want to keep listening to Him and let Him orchestrate our relationship. All right, thanks guys. That's it. Part 5, Holy Spirit Worship. Bye.